You're listening to The Sacred Sofa, a podcast that explores all things theology and therapy. My name is Grace Brown. I'm a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, and owner of Journey with Grace Counseling Services.
And I'm Brad Watson, pastor of Nexus Church and author of the book, A Path Called Compelling. Welcome to The Sacred Sofa. Good morning, Grace. Welcome back to The Sacred Sofa, our second season now. How are you doing?
Hello, Brad. Welcome back. I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited for this new season of The Sacred Sofa. Maybe we'll start for our new listeners and followers. What is The Sacred Sofa? Let's go there.
Yes. Well, my name is Brad Watson. I'm the pastor at Nexus Church in downtown Kitchener. I'm also an author of the book. It is called A Path Called Compelling. And so that's a bit about who I am. And Grace, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Grace Brown. I'm a registered psychotherapist and certified Canadian counselor with my private practice called Journey with Grace Counseling. So I provide spiritual care and psychotherapy for the clients that I work with. And I'm excited about The Sacred Sofa. It's a podcast where you and I, Brad, explore all things theology and therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, of course, for those tuning in the first time, there's a whole season before this, something like 16, 20 episodes, something like that. But this is our second go at it, our second season, and I'm excited to dive into all the things this year. Grace, should I introduce maybe a little bit thematically where we want to go this year?
Sounds great. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, the idea this year with the Sacred Sofa is to explore the good life. What does it mean to be living a good life? What does it mean to be flourishing as a human being? What does it mean to be happy? Is that something we should even pursue? So those are sort of the questions we're going to explore throughout this season of our podcast. And of course, again, we're going to be bringing theology and therapy into conversation together. And I hope that that will be rich for those listening and helpful for those listening as well. So that's sort of the goal and where we're headed.
Absolutely. So you talked about everyone is searching this thematic idea of the good life. Can you expound on that and introduce us to this path that we're taking in season 2?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of narrative nonfiction, and I stumbled across a book called The Thrill of the Chase. And what it did is it outlined the story of a very enigmatic man named Forrest Fenn. Now, I'm not sure how many people have heard of this guy, but he was a fighter pilot back in the Vietnam War, won the Silver Star Medal. He had quite the storied career in the military. But when he retired, his life got even more interesting, if that's possible. He became an artifact hunter, always an outdoorsman, always hunting, looking for ancient artifacts. And he mysteriously ran into a lot of money. Some people believe this guy was even D.B. Cooper. Some people will know what that means. But he started a museum in Santa Fe. It became Santa Fe's most popular museum. It grossed over $6 million a year. But Forrest Fenn ran into a crisis at the age of 58. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And facing this prospect, he decided he didn't want to fight it. He just wanted to end his life. And so he tells the story about how he heads to this place. It was the most favorite place he had ever discovered in the wilderness, a place of pristine, untouched beauty. So that was his plan. He's going to go to his most favorite place in all the world and take his life there. But he arrives, has a change of heart. The beauty of the place overwhelms him. It rekindles this desire for him to live. So he returns there, but he comes up with a wild idea after this experience. He's rich now, the owner of a lot of money, artifacts. What he decides to do is fill a treasure chest filled with, it's estimated, between $2 and $3 million worth of treasure, jewelry, artifacts, gold. He hides it at his most famous spot in the wilderness and creates a riddle. He releases this riddle. You can find it online. Just Google Forrest Fenn riddle. Releases a riddle to the world. This riddle purportedly will lead somebody to the treasure chest filled with gold. They can find it. They'll be rich. It's all a big deal.
Okay.
This thing absolutely takes off, Grace. Over 350,000 people take up this search in earnest, and it
Mm,
goes on and on. Like, this riddle is cryptic. People are searching every weekend, spending nights poring over maps. In the end, it takes over 10 years before somebody actually finds it. But the story was so fascinating to me because people became very obsessed with searching, trying to find this treasure. And it became
hmm,
a bit of a metaphor for me in thinking about this year. As people go searching for treasure, I think we humans are always searching, not for
mm,
literal
mm,
gold, of course, but we're always searching for the treasure of a good life, I think. I think all of
mm, mm,
us are constantly looking for, how can I improve my life? Is there ways that I could be living better? And so this idea that we're all searching for the good life has been percolating in my head for a little bit, and
mm.
it's an interesting thing to me. So that's what if we're all searching for the good life, why don't we spend some time, you and I, Grace, exploring what that might look like? Now,
Absolutely.
I wanted to start with a question for you,
Mhm,
and it's this. I see people occasionally, but every day you're dealing with clients, right, who've come to
mhm,
you, and I'm assuming, maybe there's a crisis, or maybe something isn't working in their life, or maybe they're just looking to better themselves. I'm curious, what are the major things people come to you in therapy looking for? What are they searching for when they come to therapy?
mm. Before I answer that question, I wanted to touch back about Forrest Fenn. Like,
Mm.
what a
Mhm.
fascinating story. And
Right.
my mind is blown by a 10-year history of folks looking for this treasure. Like, I'm barely a day with geocaching and I'm done.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of a trend as well, this geocaching,
Absolutely.
concept to a much, much smaller scale. And so the
Yes.
the idea of the search for treasure isn't new, but
Mm.
that's on steroids, Mr. Fens.
Right, right. Well, and it's interesting because I'm glad you brought up geocaching, because during COVID, I was doing that with the kids. And it's funny how, I would get frustrated. I couldn't find one. I'd give up the hunt, right? And I think
Mhm.
what's interesting about the Forrest Fenn story is, because there was the promise of wealth, right? two
Yes,
to three
yes,
million dollars. Like, there's something valuable you're looking for. This isn't just something hidden in
for
a
fun.
tree. Yes, exactly. But it kept people so engaged and
Hmm,
hunting all the time. It really is fascinating.
mhm. But it also speaks, as you said, to the sort of human curiosity, the human condition to be searching. And in
Mm,
terms of the work that I do with clients, the number one consultation always starts with anxiety. Like, that's the box that
mm.
everyone ticks. But on
That's
further exploration, clients are searching for healthy relationships with self and others. And then breaking that down even further, they're ultimately looking for happiness.
mhm.
Happiness with themselves, in their lives, in relationships, in careers and community. The search for happiness is ongoing for so many
Mm.
people.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm hoping this will be a big part of our podcast, because, there's lots of different trains of thought out there. Oh, searching for happiness is not a wise thing. Search for other things and maybe happiness will come. But then there's loads of research and books out there about finding happiness. And I really do think you're right when you dissect your clients' desires. What they're looking for is happiness in relationships, and that's an interesting thing to me to think about, that's what all of us really want, is a sense of happiness in life.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that I contend for is that all humans, all of us are searching, right? We're all searching for that. But when we think of the good life, or when we think of happiness, I'm curious what sort of ingredients we would put in the blender, so to speak. What is
Mm,
it that is really required to achieve happiness? And in scripture, in the Gospel of Mark, it opens with an interesting scene in the first chapter where people are looking for Jesus. That's the line.
mm,
Everyone is searching for you, Jesus. And I think Mark there is asserting that what people are really looking for is Jesus. They're looking for happiness, but they're really looking for the root of that, which, where do
mhm,
we find it? But I'm curious, when we think about all these things, I've got a list of ingredients that I think constitute a good life? And I'm curious if maybe I've missed some, but I think there's what, maybe 10 of these.
Mhm.
But I think the ingredients for a good life would include truth, meaning, goodness, beauty, love, forgiveness, acceptance, belonging, home, peace, wholeness, and flourishing. Now that's a long list, just spitting it out there.
Mhm.
But what do you think? Have I missed something there? Is there anything you would add to that list of ingredients for the good life?
Beautiful list, and I feel like there might be subcategories in each of those
Mm,
ingredients, which we'll probably explore throughout our season. But connecting to the ingredient of meaning, I added spirituality. And this goes beyond an organized religion. Many folks are looking for something beyond themselves. So
mm.
we would call that spirituality or a greater sense of self. I think I'd also add passion and or excitement, something that breaks up the
Ah,
mundane. I
yeah.
mean, this Forest Fen, that was already speaking
Mm,
to excitement and looking for something beyond. Breaking up the mundane can be anything from traveling to exploring the cuisines of the world to the other end of the spectrum, paragliding, bungee jumping, those sort of
right.
extreme sports. We're all searching for this passion, this excitement, that's something that breaks up the usual and the boring.
Mm,
The other thing I added was authenticity. Folks wanting to be genuine, to be an genuine themselves, showing up as their true selves, as well as experiencing that in community. We all want the real thing.
right. Those are great additions. I like each of those. And passion, that really resonated, right? Like, yeah, you need
Mhm,
something, whether it's the vacation or the adrenaline rush or just that thing that you can pour yourself into that,
mhm,
get in
mhm,
that flow state, something you're passionate about. So, okay, let's start with our list then here, because this is what we're all talking about this year, the good life. Maybe we could talk about why we search for each of these things. And we don't have to go through the whole list that we've made, but are there any that stand out to you? And what do they say to you? What does it mean to have this as part of your life?
mhm. Well, automatically, I jumped on truth. One of
Mm,
my personal values in life, in my professional world, is honesty and truth. And I think now more than ever, there seems to be an ongoing search for truth and understanding.
mm,
People are less likely to just blindly trust the experts, right?
right.
With so many institutions breaking down or disappointing us, self advocacy is on the rise. People are more likely to dig deeper, look behind the mask for transparency, honesty, and truth. And so that's the
Mm.
one stood out to me quite powerfully.
Fascinating. And I think as we start to understand more and more about how social media companies, all that stuff are sort of
Mm,
tailoring our algorithm, kind of feeding us a bit of an
mhm,
echo chamber, I do think there is a reaction, a push to, hey, I want to make sure I'm not just blindly following something. I do have a
mhm,
desire to know the truth.
mhm,
That's yeah. And a few years ago, I don't know if I would have pointed to that as one of the things that I think constitutes a good life, but there must be something in the air right now. I totally agree with your assessment. I think
mhm,
we're all want a deeper understanding and don't just want to accept the
mhm,
authorities necessarily, right?
mhm. The other one that stood out for me is meaning,
Mm,
something beyond ourselves, the pursuit of paying it forward, that altruism. I think more and more people are just satisfied with the status quo. They want to
mm,
know that their life means something.
mm,
Tied into that is goodness. You just mentioned social media and things like that. With so much of the world bent on sensationalizing the darkness in the world, we need
right.
glimmers of goodness. We
Mm.
need to feel hope. Mm, that didn't make our list, I don't think. Hope.
No, it
We need
didn't.
hope.
No. Yes. Yeah.
And then beauty within and without, beyond the expected. I think even from exploring nature's canvas to even
Mm,
Instagram fantasies, folks are searching for
mhm.
beauty, and that search is endless. Mm,
Yeah, let me can
mhm.
I jump in on those because I
Absolutely.
love what you're
Mhm,
saying there. The meaning one, and then I wanna jump to the beauty one too. The meaning one is interesting to me because I think we try to suppress this thought a lot, numb ourselves to it. But there can be for some of us this insecurity. I really hope life isn't just an absurd joke,
Mm.
and wanting to know, no, I want to know that what I do here matters, that this life matters, that we're not some cosmic accident, that there's
Mhm.
substance to our existence. And yeah, I think that's so important for people to have, especially if we want to give people a sense of hope. You do
Mhm.
matter. There is meaning here. And then
Mhm.
beauty. I'm just always fascinated by the way people do up their homes, right? Every time I'm in
Mhm.
somebody's home, I'm like, they're trying to make it beautiful in here. And whether it's our surroundings at home or out in nature,
Mhm.
again, beauty doesn't, make the pragmatic list. It's not necessarily that practical thing, but we're so impoverished without it. We need
Mm.
beautiful things in our lives. So,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I really like that one.
Mhm. Love, that absolutely has to make the list. Folks
Mm,
are searching for love everywhere, and we'll absolutely expound on that. The other one that stood out to me was belonging. Brené Brown has an interesting take on this concept around belonging. She says, fitting in is becoming who you think you need to be in order to be accepted. And acceptance is on our list, right? So that's that
yes.
wanting to be included. But belonging, it actually goes a bit deeper. Belonging, Brene Brown says, is being your authentic self and knowing that no matter what happens, you belong to you.
Hmm.
And I think belonging is almost like the compass that will guide your search for acceptance. If you're strong and centered in who you are, you know, you're not going to just try to fit in any old group.
Hmm.
That's gonna be
Hmm.
the value compass that guides the group you want to be accepted in or received into. So I think that's a really powerful thing that we'll explore further on in our season.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you give us that quote one more time? I think that's pretty profound, actually.
Mhm. Fitting in is becoming who you think you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging is being your authentic self and knowing that no matter what happens, you belong to you.
Hmm. That is so good. And as you were describing belonging there, the two I highlighted were home and flourishing. And
Mhm.
home ties in so much with what you're talking about belonging. When I think of home, it's beyond a house, right? It's
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
certain group of people that I feel I can be completely authentic around. I can be my complete self. And even when that self is sometimes maybe a little ugly or makes mistakes or
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
it's not a threat to my belonging.
Mhm.
That no matter what you see of me, there's going to be a belonging there. So home sort of captures that idea for me, and it's
Mhm.
something that I know I'm always looking for with people. You tend to make an assessment of people. Are they safe? Am I
Mhm.
my true self, my authentic self, whatever? Is that safe in the company of this other person? And I think when we can answer yes to that, we found a sense of home or belonging. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, that's great stuff.
I like that as well. And explore flourishing with me, Brad. How does that stand out to you?
Yeah, flourishing to me is really there's a sense that sometimes I know who I am and what I'm capable of,
Mhm.
but I often maybe miss that mark, or I often don't try out of fear of failure, or,
Mhm.
I think flourishing to me describes a state where I'm living into the potential that I know I have, or not necessarily success. I don't think it's that, but no, I'm living and using my gifts and talents, all of
Mhm.
those well, they're all firing, all cylinders are firing, so to speak. So that's how I
Mhm.
kind of understand flourishing. The need to sort of, as a therapist, you don't want to be just a therapist. You want to be a good therapist. You want to be good
Mhm.
at your craft. You want to be good
Mhm.
at what
Mhm.
you're doing, or at least trying to improve and hone your skills. Right. And
Mhm.
I think to me, that's how I would understand flourishing, not settling for the status quo of myself, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Mhm. And I think that speaks to what we're talking about here, the search for the good life. The search
Mm,
is going to be ongoing. It's never static. We don't ever seem to get there permanently or keep or hold on
mm,
to some of these things or any of these ideals that we're talking about. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm,
We spoke in a previous season about the ladder. You're always striving to level up,
right.
right? And
Yeah.
that's part of the human experience is to keep going and going. And sometimes we need to take a break, but we
Yeah.
don't just rest on our laurels, as they used to say, but we keep pushing for living into our potential. I like that. I
Mm.
like that
Mm.
motion and progress thinking of that.
Yeah, and Grace, this is the perfect time of year. I don't know what happens
Mm.
when your kids are out of school if the calendar feels different, but September always feels like the real new year to me, right?
Mhm.
And there's a sense that summer is that sort of healing, resting, rejuvenating yourself so that when fall comes around, okay, here we
Mhm.
go. Let's pursue, let's keep climbing the ladder, pushing onwards, so to speak. So it feels like a good time of year to be talking about this stuff, right?
Mhm. Mhm. I also feel like the fall is almost like a mini reboot, heading
Mm.
into the winter for some reason. It also is a return to routine. I find it to be the same. I would like you to share your personal story about the search for the good life. Why, once we receive that thing that we've been searching for, why does it seem almost like a letdown at the end, a disappointment? I think you have a
Mhm.
story and a quote about that.
I Yeah, I certainly do, and I mean, I actually, because 'cause I'm too scared to get a tattoo, Grace, I actually have this quote from Karl Rahner that I love that it's in my pair of glasses, it's on the inside there,
Hmm.
and what Karl Rahner says is this: "We are living in the torment of the insufficiency of all things attainable." And, I could give you countless stories. That's a bit of an awkward phrasing, but I love
Hmm.
it, and Kristen and I just witnessed it this summer. She's been training for years for triathlon. She finally won first place, right? And then the post experience of going, that's amazing. I won. Okay. But now
Mhm.
what? Right. And sort of
Mhm.
that fleeting emotion. You work hard, you achieve something. And then, it kind of goes, okay, well, there's still an itch in life. I'm still
Mhm.
searching for
Mhm.
something. It was very similar to be honest, last year when I released the book, right? There's a certain,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I crossed the finish line. It's now released into the world and there's an excitement. But then there's also the, okay, well, that
Mhm.
didn't permanently satisfy me.
Mhm.
What's the next work project? And, I think a lot of life is really, you pursue things, maybe you get a taste of something, and
Mhm.
then you go, that wasn't completely fulfilling, and I can't help but wonder if that impulse is there for a reason. It keeps
Mhm.
us searching, that we're never truly satisfied. It keeps us hunting, and I think there's something deeply spiritual about that. It's there for a reason, but I think some people maybe feel it more poignantly than
Mhm.
others, and
Mhm.
I'm curious if that sort of resonates with you or not, because I know
Mhm.
I've told some people about how I see this as my state of being, and they're like, "That sounds like an awful way to live life, never being satisfied with anything."
I think it exists in all of us, and I think
Mm.
you're right. Some people will feel that more poignantly than others. I was watching on Netflix Simon Biles documentary
Oh,
about
yes,
the
yes.
US gymnast, and such a powerful story, not only as an athlete, but an athlete who in their prime took time off. In 2020, she took time off and faced a lot of adversity and heat for that. And watch the
Mhm.
docu series. It's
I
quite
have.
good.
I have seen it. It's
Fantastic,
amazing.
right?
It's amazing.
But I remember her talking about the post Olympic experience, how athletes will go into a depression. They've
Mm,
spent some of them lifetime, season after season striving for, getting on the podium, right? Bronze, silver, gold. And then there's this period of what's next? I got
right.
that, but then they're in a slump. And I think
Yeah.
all of us have that sometimes where we're so driven to reach a particular goal. And then once we've reached it, it's like, okay, what's next? And it
Mhm.
takes intention to just sit with not only the joy of the success, but then the what comes after, which I think is can be useful in terms of rejuvenating, recharging, refreshing, and then re-envisioning where you're headed on the path of life. I think it's all really useful. And
Yeah,
I
and
think
she's
go ahead, yeah.
sorry, no, go ahead.
And so I think for all of us, it's important to not run away from the shadow part of life
Mm,
as well. Other thoughts,
mhm.
Brad?
Well, I thought that the documentary was, phenomenal, and it
Mm.
came out at the perfect time around the Olympics, right? But the inner
Mhm.
work that she had to do, in untying, okay, is my whole identity the gymnast thing,
Mhm.
and if I can't be the gymnast, if that falls apart, then who am I? There was just so much good stuff in
Mm.
that documentary that I think ties in with a lot of what I hope we'll explore. And is there a place where you can go, okay, I may never be truly satisfied. There always might be the next thing, but can I find a
Mhm.
sense of contentment or like an even is there a mode I can be in
Mhm.
that doesn't allow that restlessness to drive me crazy, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, she's a great example of that, I think.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think our life on this side of heaven is just that. This
Mm,
goes back to Jesus's claim as the source and giver of all good things, of the good life. And while
mm,
there's so much in life that can bring us happiness and joy, we're not meant to hold on to it forever, at least on this
mhm,
side of heaven. Life is full of light and shadow, and it's the shadowlands that actually allows us to really enjoy the good life when we can be present in it. And so here, all the goodness is temporary. The idea of here but not yet. And so this
mm,
is like a preview of what is to come. And so it's not supposed to be ultimately fulfilling. What are your
mm.
thoughts around that, Brad?
Oh, I'm so with you 100%. And I know that a lot of my faith really comes down to
Mm,
this that Augustine talks about our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you, God. And a
mm,
lot of people sort of interpret that as, oh, okay, if you find God in this life, you'll be content and happy. And now I don't see Augustine's words that way, whether he
mhm,
intended it or not. But there's a certain, for me, with a quote like that, I think this whole life is restlessness, and there's
mhm,
always a searching, there's always, you know, trying to find that next thing, but it keeps pushing us towards God and spirituality. And I do firmly hold that there is something beyond this life
mhm,
that will find that rest, but not in this lifetime.
mhm,
So, and
mhm,
again, for some people, that's like, oh, this sounds kind of awful in a way, but I think there's a way to live your life and hold yourself that holds a certain restlessness and a certain searching, but you're living well. You have a good life.
mhm,
So
mhm.
hopefully we'll get into more of those little details throughout the course of this next few weeks anyway.
I'm excited. So, in this season, we'll be exploring searching for the good life. We hope you will join us as we
Mm.
explore what it means to pursue the good life and what sorts of things are worth pursuing if we truly want to live and experience the good life. Well, Brad, here's another
That sounds great.
entrance into some really exciting places with the sacred sofa. I'm really looking forward to this journey with you, my friend.
As am I. We'll see you next time, Grace.
Take care.